Welcome. Hey, everybody. This is Jason Clemmons, Doctor of Chiropractic at the Rock Health and Wellness Center. And this is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. It is Thursday, March the 13th. And I apologize for missing that intro right there on the radio. I had an emergency low back problem that just walked in at 5:30. So I just got seated, just got everything turned on, but we're live, we're ready to go, and we can talk about wellness. We don't need a lot of prep to talk about wellness, and that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to try to make it fun and enjoyable for you to listen to. We're on 98.7 Walk by Faith, 1420 AM, 987radio.com, and we're on all of our social media pages, live and ready to go. So I guess we're all bracing for the wind. That's what they keep telling us. We got 80-mile-an-hour wind supposed to be coming at us in Lubbock. I don't know if I've ever heard them say that before. 80-mile-an-hour winds. That sounds a little bit crazy, but yeah. Did you guys have a good day? Hope so. If you did, send me a message or something. Send me a text. Send me a chat. Any of those things. We can talk about it. If you got anything special you want to talk about, we could talk about that too. I want to answer a couple of the questions from last night and that we got on Facebook. And I appreciate the comments. But one of the comments was, so much information to start the health change. How do I stair-step this change? And that's a really good question, Isabel. I appreciate you asking that question. Because, this has been, for me, a lifelong journey, and it's been a 52, 53-year, 54-year journey, and I'm still on it. So there's still days that I don't do this stuff right, and there's still things that I'm trying to get right in my diet, in my exercise, in my sleep, and the way that I handle my thoughts and all those sort of things. So the first thing I would tell you is that it's a lifelong journey. You're in it for the long haul, and you're trying to do your best every day and make sure that you're getting you're just moving forward every day. I think that is really the most important point. And then there's just obvious things, like there's like little things that you can do that cover so many areas. Like number one is if you could go to bed and wake up at the same time every day. I know how simple that sounds, but that would be something that if you could do that, it would be a good start. Maybe you can't. Maybe you got kids. Maybe you don't control your schedule. One thing you could do is try to eat some protein in the morning. If you're going to eat breakfast, I would try to eat some protein instead of refined carbohydrates. So eat some eggs, eat a steak in the morning if you want to. Eat some raspberries or some blueberries, and get your carbs in a form that's going to go slow into your bloodstream instead of like toast and jelly or a biscuit or something like that, donuts, all those things that we've all had 1,000 of in our lifetime. Those are things that if you could have something that has some protein with it, it will help control your cravings throughout the day. So get to sleep and wake up at the same time. Dr. Huberman, if you guys ever listen to him, he's got one of the best podcasts, health and wellness podcast. I don't know if health and wellness. He's got one of the best podcasts on the internet. He's a really serious guy. I listened to him last summer in Dallas at NeuroCon at Parker College. And I really appreciated, more than anything else, I appreciated his intensity and his seriousness about what he was doing. He was kind of a no-nonsense guy, and he got right to the point. But one of the things that Dr. Huberman talks about a lot is getting sunshine on your eyes as quickly as possible in the morning. Getting not lights, not fluorescent lights or any sort of LED lights from inside, but if you can get a window shade pulled up, or if you can go outside and stand to get sunlight in your eyes, it actually starts the mechanism that helps you go to sleep at night. It kind of like is starting to stop the stopwatch. It's like if you've got, all right, there's going to be 16 hours or 18 hours or however long that you're going to be awake during the day. The quicker you can get that sunlight on your eyes in the morning, according to Dr. Huberman, the quicker that'll start that clock and move you forward. So um, that's one of the things that is simple. It doesn't cost any money. It doesn't cost any money to go to bed at the same time or wake up at the same time. It doesn't cost any more money, maybe a little bit with eggs these days, but that you might have a little bit of investment by making sure that you get some protein in the morning and then get some sunlight on your eyes. And then the other thing that I think is just a big deal for a couple weeks, maybe 2 weeks, just walk every day. Just go for a walk. Because what going for a walk will do is it will ramp up your brain. I've told this story multiple times, but just for Isabel, I want to tell it again tonight, just to make sure that you kind of understand this. One of the things I really enjoy about life is you never know what lesson you're learning. You never know when you're going to use the lesson that you're learning in the moment necessarily. Like there's times where you learn things. I'll give you an example. I worked for my uncle over the winter break of my sophomore year in college for 13 days, I think, or 8 days or 10 days or something like that between the fall semester and the spring semester. So it was over the Christmas holiday. I went to Kenna, New Mexico from Roswell, and I helped my aunt and uncle, John and Jenny, on their cattle ranch for 10, I think it was 10 days, for 10 of the coldest days that I've ever lived, probably. I mean, it was cold. And we were horseback every day, and we were doing all kinds of stuff, and we were working. But there was an old cowboy named Coy Wilson. And Coy, his son, that they called him Little Pot, and Little Pot was on the ranch as well. And Little Pot was kind of my hero when we first moved out to Roswell, because he came and he was our stud manager on our horse ranch for a little while. And so I followed him around like a shadow for he couldn't even hardly take a step without me being underneath his feet for a while. But then later on down the road, that was when I was in 5th grade. But this time now I'm in college, and I was helping my Uncle John on the ranch, and John and Jenny, and I was the one that had to get out and open the gate and close the gate behind the truck. And I didn't know what I was doing. You would think it's a little it's a little more complicated than you think. Closing a barbed wire fence gate, if you've never done it before, you can do it wrong. And I did it wrong, and I kind of manhandled it. And it's got one of those deals where there's a post, and then that post has like a little horseshoe at the bottom of it, and it's got a horseshoe at the top of it. And so you got to take the other post and you got to put it in those two horseshoes to close the gate. They're little wire horseshoes, right? Like made out of wire that kind of shaped like a U. And after about the second or third day, Coy let me ripen a little bit, before he told me. But he came out there and he told me, he said, Jason, look here, put the bottom end of the post in that little wire horseshoe first. And then just lean over with your shoulder and just kind of lean into it and reach around to the other side and grab onto the post there, and you can just lean into it, and then you could just drop that horseshoe over the top. And he said, you don't have to manhandle it. If you just get it lined up right, it'll go right into place. Well, I was a sophomore in college. I hadn't even declared that. I thought I was going to be a football coach. I hadn't even declared anything about chiropractic at this point. I didn't know. I wasn't expecting that to be a lifelong lesson. But I can tell you that I don't. It's over 100 times. It's got to be more than that because I've done over 100,000 adjustments, well over 100,000 adjustments now over 20 years. And you don't know how many times. I bet you there's probably been 1,000 times that I've heard Coy's voice. I've heard Coy's voice say, you don't have to manhandle it. Just get it lined up right. It'll drop right into place. And it was like listening to him, like, you don't have to manhandle it. When you're adjusting somebody's spine, you don't have to manhandle it, right? Like that's one of the things that that I heard along the way. Well, another one of those episodes that I had this moment that I didn't really understand what I was learning, and I've told you guys this, but I'll tell Isabel, is I was in Littlefield at our office in Littlefield, and I went in one day and I turned the lights on, and I've got those, whatever they're called, incandescent bulbs or whatever. You know, they're these are kind of made like a horseshoe too that you plug in, little 2x2 squares. You got to drop the little thing down, and that's so that it's a drop ceiling in there, and that's what all those lights are. Well, I would flip the switch on the wall, and like all the lights would come on except for 3. And I was like, well, that's weird. I guess those lights are out. And then I turned the light switch off, and then I turned the light switch back on, and all the lights would come on, including those, and then there would be a different one over here that didn't come on. And I thought, this is so weird. Like, their light bulbs are fine, but for some reason, it's not working like that. And then I plug in a fan. I plug in a fan over here in one room, and then I go around to the other room and I'd plug a fan in the other, or on the other side of the wall, and I plug a fan in and it wouldn't work. Or a light bulb or a lamp, one lamp would work and the other lamp wouldn't work. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, I don't know what's going on, but something's weird. So I had a friend that's a patient that he came out to Littlefield. He's an electrician. I said, hey, man, would you come out there with me and just check this out? Something's going on in my building. And he said, yeah, he'll come out there. So he came out there with me, and we checked it out. And he took his little meter and he touched the outlet, and he's like, this is wrong. Something's wrong. He's like, where's the box? Where's your fuse box and all that in the building? And I said, well, it's back there in the back, in that back room. So he went back there in the back room and he touched his little meter on there, and he said, no, there's nothing. It's not here. There's something wrong coming into your building. And so he went outside and he walked out in the alley, and he could tell. He went across. He followed the wire across from my building into the alley, and he was like, dude, that transformer blew up out there, or whatever. I guess that's what it's called, is on the telephone pole out there in the alley, some gray cylinder looking thing. And he was like, you got to call the electric company. They got to come out here and fix that. And so I called the electric company, and it didn't take just a couple of minutes. I mean, those guys, probably 5-10 minutes. Those guys were already out there, and they were fixing that thing. And they fixed it before we left. And so as soon as they fixed it, as soon as they brought enough power to the building, I could turn the light switch on, and all the lights would come on in the whole building. And I could plug in lamps in every outlet. I could turn on all the lamps and all the fans and all the lights, and everything has worked, and everything has worked every day since then. Well, I didn't have any idea what I was learning at the time. But what I learned from that is that, and I can't even verbalize what I learned from it properly, because I don't understand the electrical language properly enough. But what I did learn was there's a certain amount of voltage, I guess, amps, watts, something that you're supposed to have. Volts, I think, right? Maybe it's 120 volts that you're supposed to have coming to your outlets. And I was getting about 100. I was getting about 90 to 100 volts. Let's say 80 to 100. maybe 110. I don't know. Something. That's how many volts I was getting to each one of those outlets. So what was happening is I could run some of the things, but I couldn't run all the things. I had enough power in the building to run one lamp, but I didn't have enough power to run both lamps. Does that make sense? Okay. Well, fast forward to when I read The Master and His Emissary, and I finally understood the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere, and that they're different. I mean, let's just start there. So Isabel, stick with me on this one, but they're different. You have two sides of your brain. Now, if you think about that from why did God do that? Or if you're not a God person, why did we evolve that way? Why do we evolve with two distinct halves of our brain? What is the purpose of that? If there wasn't a purpose, we would just have one full brain. It wouldn't be divided in half. And it's literally divided in half. I mean, it's one side is a little bit bigger than the other, so it's not half. But I mean, you've got a division called the corpus callosum that's basically sitting right between those two hemispheres. So each hemisphere has different function. Okay? But think of those two hemispheres as a lamp. Think about having like a lamp. I don't even know if I could draw a lamp, but you've got a lamp over on one side, and you've got a lamp over on the other side. Okay? You got a right side lamp and you got a left side lamp, just like I had in the Littlefield building. Okay, what happens to us? This is what I really believe. And I don't necessarily know that I have an article to explain it. I have a book called The Master and His Emissary book that I actually love, but it's difficult to read if you're not studying this stuff all the time. But when we were getting in Littlefield, when we were getting 80 to 110 volts or whatever into the building, we could only run one lamp at a time. We couldn't run both lamps at the same time. So if you're going to say, all right, well, how do I process my universe? What's the thing that I do how do I see the world first? I see the world first in my right hemisphere. That's how I see the world first. It's over on the right side. Why do I see the world first in my right hemisphere? Because I need to know if there is a threat. Right? Is there an alligator or a tiger that's going to eat me? Because as far as your brain's concerned, that's the most important, that is the number one thing on the hierarchy of your brain, is survival for the next minute. If your brain thinks that it's in an environment that it's not sure about, that it's not going to live for another minute, it will shut down all the things that are going on inside your body. It will just eliminate. It's like, look, I don't care. Have you ever been with someone and they're trying to do one thing and you say, hey, come on, we got to go. And they're like, I'm not leaving until I do this one thing. And that's what happens in the right hemisphere of the brain. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to determine if you're being threatened. If you've ever been with someone who's just stressed out all the time, like they're super stressed out, they're under a lot of stress, or if you've ever been with someone who grew up in an environment that's not nurturing at all, they didn't have a mom or a dad that nurtured them at all. It was very demanding, and they were always wondering if they were going to get in trouble. They were always wondering if they were going to have their next meal. They were always wondering how things were going to turn out. Like it was always stressful. That person, they can't see the big picture of things. They have to get, it's a very low level of function. Okay? So, and that happens in that right hemisphere. So basically is we have a certain number of volts that's coming from the body to the brain, because the brain is an input organ first. The brain is a receiver before it is a sender. The brain is going to, if you leave the brain alone and you don't move, the brain will go to sleep. It just doesn't want to do anything. If the brain had its choice, it would work as easy as it possibly could work. Okay? So the way the brain knows what's going on in its world is it's receiving sensory information. And it's receiving, think about that, it's receiving 3 trillion bits of information per second. The brain is a receiver. Remember yesterday we talked about the energy ball? The ladies in the 8 o'clock workout class, they loved the energy ball this morning. They're like, one of them even took one for a class that she's having tonight. The energy ball. You touch one side, you touch the other side, and the ball lights up. And we got in a big circle. Remember we did this last night? Touch the ball, and it lights up. Well, we got in a circle. There was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us in the room. And I had one of the ladies touch the ball on one side, and then we all held hands. And then when they touched over there, the ball lit up. The energy, we saw the energy flow, right? Okay, we are receiving that energy in the form of our sensory input into our brain so that our brain can decide what's going on in our universe. What is happening in our environment? What do I need to do next? I need to get all that sensory input. So it's going to fire, but it's going to fire over here to the right side first. I mean, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but it's going to fire to the right side first because it's going to determine whether or not you have a threat. Now, I really want you to think about that. I want you to think about how many moments you operate in a day when you think about being threatened. Think about that. How many moments do you worry about the bills? How many moments do you worry about relationships? How many moments do you worry about the government or what's going on with something? And really, our reaction to that environment has a lot to do with our determination of whether or not it's going to threaten our future in some way. Like, what do I care about anything that President Trump is doing today? Like, what do I care? What do I care if the Democrats and the Republicans are cooking and eating each other? Like, what do I care about any of that stuff? Right? What do I care about like Ukraine and Russia? What difference does that make to me? What do I care about the border? What do I care about diversity and all the rest of that stuff? Like, the only thing that would matter in all of those subjects, really, to me, is how it threatened my future or the future of my children, which I would perceive as a threat. Right? What about how much money you got in the bank and you got to get to payroll? Or how much money you got in the bank and are you going to be able to even pay your light bill this month? Or how are you going to even afford to buy any good food or supplements? Or how are you going to make it? What if I think I made the point. There's a lot of things that were threatened. We have a conversation with someone, and the way that we react to that conversation has a lot more to do with our internal self. That's one of the things I keep saying over and over and over each week, is that it's the health of the host. It's my internal peace. It's my internal peace that determines the interaction that I'm going to have with another person. And if my internal peace is threatened, I'm constantly reacting in a threatened kind of scenario. And so this right hemisphere is where we get that power first. But if we're supposed to have 120 volts of power coming in, but we only have 80 volts of power coming in, then we don't have enough power to run both lamps at the same time. We only have enough power to run one lamp. And which lamp are we going to run? If we can only run one lamp at a time, we're going to run the one in the right hemisphere, because we're going to run the one that's going to deal with the threat that's in our environment first. Okay? And that's going to give us, that's going to set a whole physiology inside of our body. It's going to, we've been through all of the things, right? It's going to increase our anxiety. It's going to increase our depression indirectly. It's going to increase our fight or flight response, which is our sympathetic nervous system. Okay? It's going to decrease logical behavior. It's going to increase instinctive behavior. All of that's going to happen in that right hemisphere if we only have 80 volts. So you're going to ask me the question, what do I do first? And I'm going to go back to the Bible and I'm going to say, begin with the renewing of your mind. That's the first step. Begin with the renewing of your mind. And how do you renew your mind? You get enough voltage to the brain. That's how you start. You can say your prayers, but you can also start. We got to take a break. When we get back from the break, I'll continue with this thought, and then we'll see where the rest of the show goes from there. So we'll be right back. Yeah, lazy brain. That's exactly right. I'll show you a great example. I wish I could pull it up. You could go to YouTube and you can search Glenn Campbell Alzheimer's. And you can go to Glenn Campbell Alzheimer's on YouTube. And we're on a break right now, so that's why I'm going over this stuff. Just go to YouTube and put Glenn Campbell, Campbell, and then Alzheimer's. It'll pop up automatically. And then just go through here and watch a couple of these. See Glenn Campbell play guitar during his final days with Alzheimer's 7 years ago. And when you do that,
it's haunting video of Glenn Campbell playing guitar during his final days at an Alzheimer's facility. It was taken by his daughter, Debbie, who gave it to Inside Edition not long ago because she wanted the world to know that her dad still had his musical talent, even if he couldn't remember all the lyrics to his classic songs.
Yeah, you can listen to him play the guitar.
Claimed her dad's fourth wife, Kim, wasn't keeping her up to date on her dad's condition.
Okay, how can he do that? Right? How could Glenn Campbell, how could he play a guitar? He can't remember his name. He can't remember his daughter's name. He doesn't know what band he's in. He doesn't even know the words to his songs that he sang for 50 years. Like he doesn't know what town he's in. He doesn't know anything. His brain is not working. But if you put a guitar in his hand, he'll shred that guitar like he doesn't even know. And how does that happen? Well, how that happens is that the brain will take the things. The brain takes the things that it knows how to do, that it does regularly all the time over and over again, and it just sends it down to the lower part of the brain and it puts it on autopilot. And when it puts it on autopilot, you don't have to think about it. You can just do it. That's what people call muscle memory, which doesn't exist, right? Hang on, let me get us back on. Okay, everybody, we're back. This is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. We're answering a question. tonight. It's how we ended up getting into all this. But we're answering a question: how do I stair step my way into health, basically? And during the break, what I was showing everybody is if you go to YouTube and you just search for Glenn Campbell Alzheimer's, and because the Isabel said lazy brain, she said LOL lazy brain, and I'm like, yeah, the brain doesn't want to work. It doesn't want to have to work. It will put things into its automatic pilot so that it doesn't have to think about things. You ever driven the same way to work or home or church every single day, every single day, every single day, and then one day you were going to go someplace else, but when you got to the stop sign, instead of turning, you just went right through the stop sign, just like you were going to work because you were just thinking about other things. And instead of turning and going down to the grocery store, you were like, "Oh, dadgummit, I forgot where I was going. I was going to work." That's that automatic memory that the brain will use to just push itself down to go in it. That's why Glenn Campbell can shred that guitar and not even know what town he's in, because he's played that guitar so many times. If you ask him, what are you playing? He might not even know what the name of the song is that he's playing, but his fingers are just like working, right? Okay. So when we've got this, so you ask the question, how do I stair step my way into health? And I'm going to say, go to bed at the same time, get up at the same time, try to eat some protein in the morning, try to get some sunlight on your eyeballs in the morning, and then move your feet. Walk and walk and walk and walk. And just start walking. Before you worry about carbs, before you worry about exercise, before you worry about doing anything, just start walking. Clinton Anderson does it great. If you guys want to watch him, go to YouTube, listen, search for Clinton Anderson. Clinton Anderson is a horse trainer from Australia. He used to live in Stephenville. I don't know if he still does. He's not my kind of guy. He's got a dirty mouth and he's a little cocky and all that sort of thing. But I learned a lot about neurology from him by watching him move those horses' feet. You know, when a horse is misbehaving, what he will do is he'll move his feet. He'll make him move his feet back and forth, because the part of his brain that misbehaves is not the same part of his brain that moves his feet, and he can't do both of them at the same time. So he'll start making him move his feet, and that horse will start doing exactly what you tell him to do when they move their feet. And that's the same thing that a human being will do. If you start moving your feet, what you will do is you will increase the voltage into the brain. You'll go from 80 volts to 120 volts. And what will that do for you? That will give you enough power to run both lamps at the same time. If you're only running the right hemisphere lamp, you're also going to have ADD over here, and you're going to get angry more often. Because that's where anger comes from, is that left hemisphere. And that's where focused attention comes from, is the left hemisphere. How many little kids do we have that get in trouble at school because they can't focus? And what are we going to do? We're going to give them a drug that has nothing to do with the fact that their left hemisphere is not firing. And what we ought to do is get them out of that dadgum chair and get them moving. That's what we ought to do. Get them on a treadmill. Make them stand up and walk all day long in school. Get them up and down the hall. Make them run up and down the hall. Move their feet. I guarantee you their ADD will go away. Why? Because they'll increase the amount of voltage that they have that's going into their brain, and they'll run both lamps at the same time. This is a major part of understanding of attention. Attention. There's 5 types of attention. And focused attention, and I know I talk about this all the time, but when you ask it in a different question, it makes more sense. If you're like, okay, well, how do I make my brain work better? How do I get myself healthy? Okay, focused attention is on the left, and if we only have enough voltage to run the right lamp, we're not running the left side properly, so we're going to not be able to focus. The other 4 levels of attention are over here. 4 types. And one of those types of attention is vigilance and alertness. Everything that's going on around us is happening in our right hemisphere. Focused attention, that I'm looking right at you, is in my left hemisphere. So I can look right at you and I can still pay attention to my entire environment. But if I don't have any power going to my left hemisphere, I'm not going to look at you. I'm just going to look at my environment. I'm just going to look over there. I'm going to look over here. I'm going to look over there. I'm going to look down here. I'm going to look over there. I'm just going to pay attention to all of those things that are over here. Why? Because I'm operating in the right hemisphere of my brain. And why am I doing that? Because I don't have enough voltage. So if you start walking and you start increasing the voltage into that, now all of a sudden what happens is you get the up and to the right and over to the left. I'm telling you, it took me a long time to understand that. And that right there, I'm telling you, if you get that concept and you can understand that, you will get so much done with your life, and you will understand what in the heck is going on with you. Because once you get enough power to get that information over, what is carried in that information? What information goes from the right hemisphere to the left hemisphere? The big picture. What is the big picture? What difference does it make if I eat right? What difference does it make if I drink alcohol or I don't drink alcohol? What difference does it make if I actually say I love you or I don't say I love you? What difference does it make if I actually do the things I'm supposed to do or I don't do the things that I'm supposed to do? If you don't have the big picture over on the side of your brain that works out all the details, then you won't get anything done. So if you start walking, what will start happening, and you won't even know it, you won't even realize what starts happening, but if you will start walking and start ramping up the amount of voltage to the right hemisphere, you will kick the big picture over to the left. And simultaneously, you will get out of the hemisphere that deals with anxiety and depression and fight or flight. You will get out, your anxiety will go down. Your depression will go down. And depression is actually an indirect thing from the left hemisphere not working. But your anxiety and depression will go down. Your sympathetic nervous system will go down. Your heart rate will drop. Your blood pressure will drop. Your stomach acid will come on. Your testosterone will come back up. Your reproductive system will work better. Your digestive tract will work better. All those things will work better if you get out of that right hemisphere. And then once that happens, once you crank that motor and you get that motor cranking and you get enough power, like an old Model A or whatever, like you get that thing cranking, it takes a few cranks, and then all of a sudden it just kicks itself on. And then once it kicks itself on, now what we get is we get back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Now we have an equal balance of right hemisphere and left hemisphere. And we get what's called inhibition. You inhibit. So now the left brain, when the right brain gets a little bit too anxious, the left brain can say, no, it's okay, just settle down a little bit. But then when the left brain gets a little bit too detail-oriented, the right brain will say, no, just settle down just a little bit and look at the big picture. And we have harmony between the right brains, the right and left brain, the two sides of the brain. There's balance in the brain. In neurology, we call it hemisphericity. When we have one side of the brain that's overactive versus the other side. And that right there is health. Because now, if you will accomplish this, if you'll get your feet moving, I had multiple people have a really hard time this winter getting through January and February. I had lots of depression. I had lots of withdrawal from society. I had lots of anxiety that was going on, trying to get through there. Just like, everything just, the world is crashing and everything is bad. And it's like, just get to March, just get to March, just get to March. Why get to March? Because other than tomorrow, when we have 80-mile-an-hour winds, we're going to be able to get outside and walk. And we're going to start to fire up our brain. We're going to want to go and then Isabel, you'll automatically start seeing the big picture of the thing. You'll be like, okay, if I walk every day, and then once you walk every day, you're like, you know what? If I just got a little bit more sleep, I bet I could walk better. And then you'll start thinking, if I just ate just a little bit better, if I had a little bit better fuel, if I put a little bit better fuel inside my body instead of putting crap inside my body that's really hard for my body to digest, because another lesson I learned is that time I put that unleaded gasoline in that diesel Park Avenue, my dad come unglued on that. Yeah, I still remember that too. That's a lesson. If you put the wrong fuel in the body, it's not going to work properly. It doesn't even make any sense. Nobody would say that. If you ask anybody that's ever had a diesel truck, if I said, hey, what if I put gasoline in that diesel engine? They'd be like, oh, don't do that. That'll ruin the whole thing. Right? If I said, what if I put a Pop-Tart in this engine? What's going to happen? What if I started my day with donuts and a coffee and a donut? What's going to happen? What if I started my day with Frosted Flake cereals or Lucky Charm or whatever? What's going to happen? It's like, well, you're probably not going to function very well. You're probably going to have all of these things that are going on with people. You're probably going to have to, get some drugs for that, right? It's not going to work right. But it's hard to see until you get enough power going in your brain. And so that's the simplest thing. If you could even skip the going to bed and skip the eating protein and skip the getting sunlight on your eyes and just start walking. Just start walking and start walking and start walking and just walk yourself into health. Just walk yourself into health. And if you did that, after a couple weeks, you'd be like, wow, you know what? I think I might eat a vegetable today. And then maybe I shouldn't have a Coke. Maybe I should just drink some water. Because here's the thing. This is vitally important. This is vitally important to the whole thing. And now that we've talked it through this way, let me say it one more time, another way, because it's vitally important. Because I'll explain to you why you want the Coke, and I'll explain to you why you want the alcohol, or why you want the chocolate, or why you want the ice cream. I'll explain to you, right? This is where the right hemisphere works on adrenaline. It does. Let me make sure I say this perfectly clear. Both hemispheres respond to adrenaline, and both hemispheres respond to dopamine. But the right hemisphere has an affinity for adrenaline. It has more receptors on the cells in the right hemisphere for adrenaline than the left brain does. Okay? The left brain has an affinity for dopamine. And the dopamine is the neurotransmitter of anticipation. It's what makes you want to move forward. It's what makes you give a crap about anything. Because if you didn't have any dopamine, you'd say, screw this and pass me a beer. Like, if you didn't have any dopamine, you'd just be like, what the heck? I might as well have some ice cream today. That's what we do when we're low on dopamine. And why are we low on dopamine? Because we got low voltage and we're only running one lamp at a time. We're only shining light out of the lamp on the right side. The left lamp isn't working. So if the left lamp isn't working, we're not focused. We're typically a little bit more angry, and we start searching because Look, we're just floating around the universe on a big old giant rock. We're just floating around, just spinning around. Like, what difference does anything make? Have you reached that point in life yet? Have you reached that point in life where you thought to yourself, who cares about any of this? What difference does it make? What difference does it make how much I weigh? What difference does it make what I do today? What difference does it make if I pay my bills or I don't pay my bills? What difference does it make if I'm true to Leslie or not true to Leslie? Why don't we just all just have a big party? Like, what difference does it make? The whole thing just, it's like, who cares, right? And it's so easy to get there. We're all going to die. We're all going to die anyway. Who freaking cares? Let's just have ice cream, right? That that line of thinking is because your dopamine receptors in your left hemisphere are dampened. You're not getting enough dopamine. And you're not getting enough internal dopamine because you're not getting that right side to left side activation, right? So if you're not getting any dopamine from internal sources, you will go to external sources. And that's where the sugar and the alcohol and the pornography and all that stuff comes from. That external source. Tattoos come from there. Person tattooed all over from top to bottom, both arms and legs and everything. Tattoos after tattoos after tattoos. What is that? And you know what you'll say? They'll say to you, they'll say, those tattoos are addicting. What does that mean? What does it mean that tattoos are addicting? What does it mean that driving fast is addicting? What does it mean that smoking is addicting? What does it mean that drinking is addicting? What does it mean that chocolate, sugar is addicting? The only thing that means is that it's dopamine supply. That's what it means. It's the reason you get up and take one step forward and move your body forward in a day. Because otherwise, you wouldn't care about moving forward. You would just sit down and just die. You wouldn't care. But you have to have some reason to move forward. And maybe that next chocolate bar is the reason you move forward. And that's what happens when we're only firing the right side lamp. But once you start to fire both sides and you break that addiction from that external source, that's why you don't need sugar anymore. But it took me, I started working out in the summer of 2019, August of 2019. I was 283 pounds. I was embarrassed. I was way out of shape. I was in bad shape. And that was in August of 2019. I didn't stop eating sugar until March the 3rd of 2022. 23, 24, 25. Yeah, of 2022. Now, why is that? It took me from August of 19 to August of 20 to August of 21 to March of 22. So it took me basically 2.5 years of moving my feet before I had the capacity to quit eating sugar. And that's the most I moved my feet since the time I was in college. Since I was playing football at Tech. We played the 1993 Sun Bowl. And I was 23 years old. I was 23 years old in October of 1993 during that season. From 23 years old to 51 years old, I couldn't stop eating sugar. It didn't matter what you told me. It didn't matter how much knowledge I knew about it. It didn't matter any of that stuff. When did I stop eating sugar? 2.5 years after I started moving my feet. And it broke it. It broke it for life. And if everybody that knows me, all my friends that know me, I know Kyle listens to this sometimes. I got some family members that listen to this show. Everybody that knows me knows that I've been overweight for I used to be a little husky kid. But then from after college all the way till even now, I'm still overweight. But it's like they've always known me to eat some cake and to eat some pie and to be the buttermilk pie guy and to be the Reese's cup guy and the Snickers bar guy and the ice cream guy and the Blizzard guy and the Jay's Creamery guy. That's been my identity for 30-something years. Really, 50-something years if you add the kid part in there, right? And now all of a sudden, I started working out 3 times a week doing CrossFit. And 2.5 years later, I decided I wasn't going to eat sugar, and it just stopped. Just like that. Why? Because I powered it up. I powered it up. I ran both lamps enough to where I got plenty of internal dopamine. And then all of a sudden, I had one moment where I could stop, and then the external dopamine has no power over me anymore. And I know that sounds crazy, and I really don't mean that in any sort of arrogant way. I really don't. I'm not bragging about that. I'm just saying that I'm saying that that's the way I think it works. I think it works by moving your feet, getting exercise, taking off, right? And I'm so thankful that I found the Master and His Emissary book, Dr. McGilchrist's work, and Dr. Peterson's work, and the combination of those two things. Because it's just like every patient that comes in, I can see it. Like, so let's talk for a second, because here's one of the things that I've said it before, but now listen to it after we've talked like this. That's what cold therapy is. Cold plunge. Your cold plunge has nothing to do with the inflammation in your body. The cold plunge has nothing to do with icing down your joints. All these athletes that get in a cold tub afterwards, they think they're just making their joints better and all that sort of thing. No. Matter of fact, it's the opposite, because it shuts down your nerves and it slows down healing. But that's not why it works. It works, and you can go listen to Huberman's podcast on this. It works because when you get inside the cold tub, you get a 433% increase in adrenaline not in the right hemisphere. You get a 433% increase in adrenaline. Well, if we got a 433% increase in adrenaline, and you and I and Dr. McGilchrist understands that the right hemisphere has an affinity for adrenaline, where's the majority of that 433% of adrenaline going? It's going into the right hemisphere. And what's it doing? It's increasing the voltage in the right hemisphere. It's giving the right hemisphere what it wants. It's driving that adrenaline up, 433% increase. And then what do you get? You get a 2.5 times increase in dopamine in the brain. But we know that dopamine has an affinity for the left hemisphere, or the left hemisphere has an affinity for dopamine. So you get a 2.5 times increase for multiple hours. It's addicting. That's what I heard Dana White say the other day on YouTube. Man, that cold tub stuff is addicting. Yeah, it is addicting, because it's firing the right hemisphere and then giving the left hemisphere. It's addicting, internal addiction. It doesn't even have anything to do with the external. You're not going to destroy your liver. You're not going to destroy your kidney. You're not going to create any sort of gout. You're not going to have any sort of arthritis problem. None of that stuff is going to happen, because the addiction is right to left dopamine. That's the addiction. And it's addicting. And that's like, and what it is it's top-down control. It's top-down control. It's our mature upper brain telling our immature emotional brain to calm down. It's the senior class and the freshman. I've said this before. When I was a senior quarterback on the football team and I got on the bus, the whole bus got quiet. Like they might have been joking around, and especially the sophomores and the freshmen, that if there were any of them on the bus, and there wasn't many on the bus, but the juniors and sophomores on the bus, when I got on, it's just I didn't even have to say anything. It's just like it was just kind of a calmness. It was because I was the leader of our football team. It's like, hey, let's go, let's calm down and get ready. When I got in the huddle, it's like, hey, let's go. It wasn't. It's like when the senior class tells the freshman class to calm down a little bit, inside the brain, it's telling the fight or flight response, the sympathetic nervous system, to calm down. Calm down. Top-down control. When you get in the water, your emotional brain wants to get you out of the water. It doesn't want to stay in the water. So that your 12-year-old self is trying to throw a fit and get out of the water. But your mature self is saying, no, I want to do this. I want to, so sit here and be still. And that top-down control drives that adrenaline, which then gives you that dopamine on the other side of your brain. You don't know all these things are going on when you start walking. You don't know they're going on, but I'm telling you, there's a lot of depth. There's a lot of depth to going for a walk. There's a lot of depth to getting on your feet and moving your feet. That's why we bought a $25,000 treadmill to put in our office for all of those people that couldn't get on their feet. For old people or anybody else that couldn't get on their feet, they can come in here and we can take 80% of their weight off their body and they can walk, which can drive their brain, which can give us a chance to get them started on their health journey. I knew that was going to be pretty good because it's always pretty good when we talk about health. Thank you, guys. That's all I got for you tonight. We will be off tomorrow night. We're going to run an encore show on the radio. I'm going to spend it with my brother and sister tomorrow night. So you guys have a great evening. I'll see you on Monday. Isabel, I hope that answered your question. And if anybody else has got any questions, please let me know.